Hello students and parents and teachers and anybody else using these videos. Welcome to another video quiz tutorial. The quiz we're going to go over today is the 7.1 quiz. This is a brand new unit, the first chapter in Unit 4, which is all about geometry. So we're going to just go ahead and start the quiz and look at each question and just discuss things out loud. Okay, so question number 1 reads, the following examples show angles that are either vertical angles, adjacent angles, or angles that are neither adjacent nor vertical. Match each image with the description. So it says place the letter from column B into the space from column A to create a match. Some descriptions may be used more than once. So basically either type A, B, or C to make a matching line appear. So you've seen matching before in Schoology, but if you're not familiar with it, just to kind of show you how it works, you can either type A, B, or C into the spaces here and these line up. So basically what this is asking you to do is it asks you to look at the angles in each image and tell whether the angles are vertical, adjacent, or neither vertical nor adjacent. And so you've only have those 3 choices. You get partial credit for this. There's 5 images, so make sure you answer all 5 of them. Scroll all the way down. So just to remind you what adjacent and vertical angles are, so this first chapter, that's basically all we're testing you on. Adjacent angles are not as interesting. Whoops. They are just angles that share a common vertex and a common side, and that's it. You don't know much about them unless they form things like right angles, but that's just about it. Now, vertical angles are a bit more interesting. Vertical angles are always congruent. They form when 2 lines are crossing or intersecting. So these 2 lines are intersecting. They're straight intersecting lines, so they're intersecting at this point, and they form from that intersection, and what's special about them is they are exact opposites of each other. They're opposite corners from each other. So these 2 red arcs that I'm marking with here are showing vertical angles. So we would say if this was angle A and this was angle B, then I would say A and B are vertical from each other. And what's so dang special about them is that they are always congruent. That's important to understand. Now, there's another pair of vertical angles, and that measured by this arc, let's call it angle C, and measured by this arc, let's call it angle D. These 2 are a different pair of vertical angles. These angles are congruent to each other as well. As long as you have that information in mind, both about adjacent and vertical angles, then this question should be fairly easy to you. Okay? So be cautious, because if the 2 angles don't share a side and a vertex, or those 2 angles aren't exact opposites from each other, then they're not going to be vertical or adjacent. So make sure you watch that carefully. They have to meet those descriptions, and if they don't meet all of those descriptions, then they're not going to be either. Look at this next one here. Just kind of again teach you how to do this question, and so this is how it works. First of all, it says complete the statement with the correct word that will make the statement true. Use the words found in the word bank. You may not use every word, just so you know. So here's the word bank down here, and so each space is either going to be vertical, adjacent, always, never, or sometimes, so you just kind of have to figure out which words fit. Okay, so the first question reads, adjacent angles are blank congruent. Okay, so review your notes on adjacent angles. Are they, and basically, here's what you're going to do, and I'll show you how this works, okay? Here's the first blank here. So if you want a word to pop in there, you can just click on that word from the word bank and it'll pop in there. Now if I want to change that, then I can just click in there and change it and click on a different one. Okay, so this is how that works. You can just click on that and that works just fine. So the question is basically, are adjacent angles always congruent, sometimes congruent, or never congruent? I want you to think about that carefully and think about what you know about adjacent angles, what's special about them, what's not special about them, what can change with them, and then move on to the next one. So the next one reads, vertical angles are, so basically, are they always congruent, never congruent, or sometimes congruent? What's so special about vertical angles? Why do we care when we work with vertical angles? So knowing this is going to be very helpful, especially this question. If you don't know the congruency status for vertical angles, I advise you to go back and review. Heck, even just do a new tab and Google search vertical angles. Like, you got to know this. You have to know if vertical angles are always, never, or sometimes congruent. Now, congruent is just a fancy word for the same or equal to each other, okay? So the next question reads, angles that are directly across or on opposite sides from each other from two intersecting lines are called blank. So by definition, what is the definition of these two angles? And then angles that share a common vertex and a common side are known as blank. So again, by definition, what goes in there. So there's 4 blanks. Make sure you answer all 4 of them. Notice when you click on them, they highlight so you know which one you're working with. Okay, the next question. Now we get to some actual calculations in mathematics. It says the following image shows 2 lines forming an intersection. Write the correct number that represents the degrees for angle A and angle B. So this is given. We've got 2 intersecting lines, so use your understanding of vertical angles to help us out with this. Just remember, vertical angles are always congruent, so if I know one side, then I should know the other. So this one shouldn't be too terribly difficult if you understand the definition of vertical angles. So again, you got to know this. Don't bother putting the degree sign, that's already provided for you. Just put the numbers. So if the number was 100, then I would just put 100 in there or whatever. Okay? Next question. All right, here's where things get a little more tricky. And so we're going to, maybe I'll come up with my own example here to help you understand how this works. Okay, so I've just created my own example here. The first thing I know is that these 2 lines are intersecting at this point, and I've just created 2 different pairs of vertical angles. I'm just going to focus on these 2 first, okay? Because I know that they're congruent to each other. And I only just did this example because basically what I do here can be applied here and also here over on this side, okay? So anyway, let's take a look at this. So if I know that these are vertical angles, then we're going to use that to our advantage. That means that vertical angles are always congruent. So I'm going to write 125 degrees because that's how big this angle of measurement is. That's how big the arc is. 125 degrees is going to be congruent to m plus 5. Now, what this is asking us is to solve for the variable m. So over here, solve for y. What does y equal? And also solve for x. What does x equal? That's what these are asking, okay? So we're not asking for the actual angles of measurement. We're asking, well, if this is supposed to be congruent, then what does that make m? And this is actually quite easy. If you think about it, this is just an equation. 125 equals m plus 5. Well, this is actually very easy. I'm just going to undo this positive 5 by subtracting 5 from both sides. So in other words, remembering how to solve for equations is going to be the most helpful thing for you. 125 minus 5 is just 120. So I know that m equals 120, which makes sense. If I were to replace m with 120, then that makes 120 plus 5 equal to 125, which is what I would expect because this angle is congruent to this angle because they are vertical. Now you'll just want to do the same thing to those angles over there as well, and all will be well. I hope this video tutorial was helpful for you. Again, it mostly is testing you on understanding of do you know what a vertical and adjacent angle are, or what they are, not necessarily anything above and beyond that. So if you know that, then you just know how to do all the rest of the math, which we've been working on since like chapter 2. Okay? Have a good day.